Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, Books with Nate, and today I have a video for you where I'm going to go over the past few books that I've read over the last few months, as well as what I'm currently reading, and then what I'm going to get into in this summer. So yeah, let's get into it. I want to kind of give a general review of each of these books, just because I don't want to give individual review videos for them, but I do want to talk about them. So let's just do it that way. The first book I read was Rhythm of War by Sanderson. This is the fourth book in the Stormlight Archive in the world of the Cosmere. So this book started off on a slightly higher note for me. We follow a few more new POVs, especially Navani, who is this, essentially her husband, King, was killed back in the first book, and we haven't really gotten too much of her perspective, but I really appreciated seeing her now. She's remarried and kind of trying to figure out her own place in the universe a bit more. I really enjoyed sort of her experimentations and her interactions with some of the characters in this book. Some of the, I won't get into spoilers, but there's some plot points that kind of lead to very interesting interactions and discoveries around the world that they're in and the place that they're in. And yeah, I just really appreciated seeing her perspective a bit more. And I think her arc as well overall was very good. Second, Dalinar. I have always loved Dalinar's POV in this series. He's a character that really compels me, and we find out more about him in the third book, I think, in terms of his past and what he's done, because he's somebody who essentially asked a god to forget, you know, what he's done in the past. So more of that is revealed, and I just really liked getting to know him a bit more. And there's also a lot of more of the world building and the magic building that happens around him, and I really just love him as a character. Yeah, he's definitely the most compelling character, I would say, of everyone, except maybe Kaladin. Now into Shallan. Shallan is she's such a back and forth character for me. I think she's an interesting character, and I like her as a character, but I don't think Sanderson writes her very well. Her arcs can be quite boring. Like throughout this whole book, it just felt like he kept kind of throwing in things to like keep the perspective going throughout the book, when it felt like it could have really been shortened and tightened up by a few hundred pages, honestly. It just, I didn't understand why, you know, he decided to throw all this random stuff in there. Like, there's this one scene where we discover and follow like the law system of this place that just doesn't make any sense, and it just kind of drags the story on. And you know, we spend all this time learning about, you know, this world, I mean, it's world building, but sometimes world building isn't necessary when you have a character who's going through what she's going through, and you don't need to, like, you know, dive deep into this all to really figure out, you know, like, this is why it happened in the past to her, versus, you know, you can just explore that in like shorter ways. And I just don't think he writes Shallan all that well, which is annoying. I think that's part of the reason why people don't like her so much, is because Sanderson just doesn't know how to write her. And she, you know, she comes off as this like stupidly witty, or not stupidly, that's the wrong word, but like he just intentionally throws in like really stupid jokes. That's kind of like her thing. And then, you know, she's going through this kind of multiple personality disorder, I guess you could say, in a way, with how she uses her magic, and it's just not written well. And it's just, again, like I said earlier, it's just, he keeps pushing that throughout the whole book, and it's like she almost comes to a point where she kind of I don't know, I don't want to say heals, but confronts it, and it's just kind of, he throws something in to drag it along, and it just doesn't feel honest, and it really bugs me, especially in this past book. And another thing that bothered me was that there seemed to be a similar kind of plot point, or a point of tension in this book, and it felt kind of reused and rehashed. And I'm also seeing that a bit in the fifth book now as I'm reading it. Yeah, and it just kind of bugs me a bit. And also, there's some characters that seem to forget that they're married, which kind of bugs me. Yeah, I mean, overall, I did like this book because I think it does expand the Cosmere a bit more, and you see more of the kind of intertwining, and I think some of the characters are very interesting, like Navani and Dalinar, and kind of Kaladin, sort of in his tension with some other characters too, was I think pretty well done, and there were some pretty dark moments there, which I enjoyed reading. But this book really could have been several hundred pages shorter, and it felt like Sanderson's kind of just getting lost in the sauce. And if that's your thing, that's your thing, but I just don't think it was done that well. So I was definitely intrigued enough to keep reading to the fifth book. I like some of the characters. It's just, it felt a little too bloated for me. Then the next two books I read were Magician's Apprentice and Magician Master by Raymond E. Feist. These are the first two books, or really the first book, technically, in the Rift War saga. This takes place kind of in an old school fantasy setting, sort of medieval Europe. You got your wizards, your dragons, dwarves, orphan to hero, that kind of stuff. But he also throws in a really big twist in there where an alien race comes along, essentially, and a rift has been opened up between these two worlds. And I think he handled it really well. And here's why. In regards to this alien race, he gives them a lot of agency, maybe later on in the second book, or the second half, you could say, but you learn more about their culture and sort of why they're doing the way that, why they're doing what they're doing, and you see it through the eyes of, our main POVs. There's a lot of political intrigue going on within the humans, and with this alien race as well, and some mystery and world building and all that stuff, and I just really loved that side of it. We follow our two main characters, or at least at the beginning, our two main characters, Pug and Thomas. They're like best friends. One becomes a warrior, one becomes a wizard, and we kind of just see them grow and also drift apart quite a bit because of what happens in these books. There's a lot of really well done history and world building around it that affects the characters and who they become. I also think that this book did have some issues in regards to pacing. It would kind of jump around a bit in terms of timeline, which felt a little jarring. And you don't really get inside characters' heads too much. But, I think that's just kind of an old school method of writing for fantasy. It was written in the 80s originally, but I did kind of like, you don't always need to get in the heads of a character so much. But because it just kind of can get bogged down a bit. However, it would have been nice to kind of get in the head of some of these people a bit more and just really explore sort of how they're feeling about something versus just a third person perspective of just the actions they're taking. I ultimately think Feist delivered a very good story with really interesting world building. I think just this concept of an alien race being in like a medieval European world, in a fantasy world, I think was really cool. I think he could have added in some more perspectives in there. However, they weren't always necessarily like super tropey either. So yeah, I think it's a really well done book so far. I'm excited to keep reading it. Again, I do recommend picking up this series if you're looking for like an old school fantasy with a twist. Definitely scratch that itch, because I was kind of needing to get into some old school fantasy after finishing Rhythm of War. Yeah, I just needed that, and I think it was really well done. Next up, I read Mistborn Secret History. This is a novella, I think, that takes place after the first Mistborn trilogy. Yeah, I won't get into too much because there's some huge spoilers for Mistborn, but we have to get some answers to some questions that I had, and it expanded the universe a bit more, and I think was a good setup for book 5. And really, you could probably read it if you're like doing everything in a row. Just read this after, book 3 of the first Mistborn series, because I think it kind of brings in some, I last time I read that was 4 years ago, so yeah, I needed some refreshers before reading this probably, but overall it was good, and I'm glad I read it. And then finally, for the books that I read, and I just finished this a few days ago, was Kingdoms of Death by Christopher Rocchio. This is the 4th book in the Sun Eater series, and I loved it. I tried to read this just over a year ago, but I think I was kind of fed up with the main POV, because I had primarily been listening to the audiobook, and I think in my head I just got like, he uses a kind of regal voice with it, and I think I was just kind of like fed up with that a bit more. But I really enjoyed this book so much. I think giving myself, sort of the space that I needed from the previous book really helped, because I missed Hadrian's sort of point of view, and I think the expansion of the world and what's happening in this book was so well done, as well as the tension and the action and everything like that. I think in the last book we got to see sort of an expansion of Hadrian and sort of what's happening to him directly with the Empire and the Quiet and all that. But in this book, The Kingdoms of Death, we got it's really just a whole universal expansion with what's happening in regards to the Cielsen, who they are, their culture, and just really their motivations behind, their wanting to eradicate the human race, essentially. So you kind of figure out that this is like a true fight to the death between these two races, and I think it's been really well done. And there's one night where I stayed up reading this for several hours when I probably shouldn't have, and yeah, it was just a very good book, and I highly recommend this series for sure. It wasn't a perfect book by any means, but I think just how Rocchio handled just the pace of when somebody's captured and going through a very difficult time and being tortured, I really felt that in here. I just think that was really well done and well executed. I think just the grief over losing people too was very well done. I don't know why I wasn't into this series a ton, before, because I'd kind of been reading it and enjoying it, and I really did like the 3rd book. I think I gave it like a 5 out of 5 or something, but I think I was just kind of like, I need a break. Maybe I needed it, because this was a really good sort of re-entry into the series, and I definitely plan on continuing this. Now on to what I'm currently reading. That would be, of course, the first one is Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson. It's the first, not the first book, the 5th book in the Stormlight Archive. I am about 40% of the way through, I believe. I think I'm enjoying it more than the 4th book. I think there's a bit of meandering going on, and a bit of just the over explanation of the magic system, to the point of there's no more there's no more nuance to it. And I think Sanderson just needs to not explain his magic system so much. Not in like a, like he is using too many words, but he's just kind of logicking it out, using logic to death over it. And it takes away a bit of the just mystery behind magic. And I think that's why I liked reading Feist so much, just because it felt like a more traditional magic system where it's just kind of something that happens and that's okay. And I don't mind explanation. I don't mind the exploration of it, like in Malazan, where it is kind of a big mystery, but then towards the end he kind of starts to explain it a bit more. Like, I don't mind that. I didn't mind you know, the first few books where it's kind of a mystery still, but I don't need to see someone trying to level up their magic system. Like, I don't want the level up fantasy. I don't care about that. Sorry, I feel like I'm just complaining about this series so much, but I do like it. I just feel like these points don't get across sometimes in media, or you know, this media. So yeah, overall, I do like it. I like seeing Adolin and his sort of journey he's going through right now. Kaladin and Seth are doing some stuff. So yeah, it's this expansion of the universe a bit more, which I enjoy. I think Shallan and how he's writing her so far is a bit better. Yeah, so I just hope it gets better. I'm kind of glad this is the last one for a while, because I just need a break from this. I think after finishing this, I mean, I like the finales. I like, you know, sort of what's going on with the gods and stuff like that in this series, and just the overall universal picture. However, it just could have been executed a bit more tightly, a bit more, you know, more well. So yeah, I hope it gets better in this book. I don't have a lot of hope, but again, I hope. Next up is The Round House by Louise Eadrich, I believe it's pronounced. This is a fiction book, and it follows the perspective of a son, you know, a boy on a Native American reservation in the 80s, whose mother is assaulted, and it's kind of looking at the aftermath of that, especially in the 80s on a reservation, and sort of how the dynamics between son, father, husband, and the government sort of trying to, you know, find the person who did this, and, you know, seeing the perspective, or not the perspective, but I guess the perspective of the son as he watches his mother kind of deteriorate, and deal with the aftermath of it. And I think it's very well done, and it's very powerful too, and it's very yeah, I think it's a very well done book so far. I'm about halfway through. I think she writes the perspective of a boy in that situation, a teenage boy in that situation, really well, just in terms of probably some of the thoughts that are going through their head and the feelings they might feel. He's trying to kind of take this on by himself as a teenage boy, trying to find the person who did this, and you know, his father too is trying to help, but they kind of keep coming into all these roadblocks. But you know, it's delicately handled, I think, and well done. So yeah, I'm excited to finish this. I definitely want to pick up more of her work. Yeah, it's a good book. It's a good book. I recommend, with, you know, trepidation and warnings around it. But yeah, it's a very good book. And then finally, what's up next? What I plan to read. I'm not 100% certain on all of these, because there's just some stuff going on in life. But yeah, I definitely want to continue with Raymond E. Feist's Rift War Saga. This is Silverthorn. This is the second book, technically, because the first two books are technically a bind-up in the UK, and they were released originally as one book. So this is like the second book, sort of. I'm excited to continue with this. It follows about a year after the events of the first book. And yeah, I just can't wait to get back into this world, because I just think it's a really, very, very cool world. And I like his writing. It's very accessible. It's like kind of a medium-paced series. So yeah, I'm excited to get back into it. And then another book I want to read, maybe a little bit down the line, is James by Percival Everett. I got this at a book exchange for Christmas with my family this last year, just because the premise sounded very interesting. It follows Jim, who is an enslaved man in 1860s America. You know, it follows Jim from Huckleberry Finn, and gets his perspective of it all. I haven't read those books since high school, and I can't tell you a thing that happens. So I'll probably read this summer. I've only heard good things about it, and it won the National Literary Award, I think, or maybe the Pulitzer Prize in Literature. I don't remember. It won something big, really big in the literature world. So I do want to read it. I read like the first chapter recently just to kind of, you know, see if I'd like it or not. And I really liked it. First 2 chapters, maybe. Yeah, and I can't wait to read it. So yeah, James. And then next, it's either between Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr or Babel. I plan to read one of these with my wife. She read this book back in 2023 or last year maybe, and she loved it. She said I would really like it. She wants to reread it. It follows, let's see here, yeah, 15th century Constantinople. So I think it follows like the end of the Byzantine Empire, present day Idaho, you know, the end of the Idahoan Empire, and then the future and humanity's last hope. So it takes place in the future a bit, and there's kind of these intertwining stories and artifacts, I believe, yeah, by a text, and there's like libraries and stuff like that that are important, and books and all this other stuff. So apparently it's a very, very good book. And this author also wrote All the Light We Cannot See, which won Pulitzer Prize as well. So yeah, I think this would probably be the one that we read, but she also wants to read Babel, which is by R.F. Kuang, which came out a year or 2 ago. That is everywhere. Everybody loves it. So maybe you'd read that. I'm not sure. It's kind of a dark academia fantasy. I don't know too much about it, but I think I would like this more. But yeah, plan to read this hopefully soon. And then last up is Ashes of Man. This is the 5th book in the Sun Eater series. I want to read this book really badly. So yeah, I'll probably read it soon. I don't know what else to say about it, but I'm excited to keep going with it. So Ashes of Man, that's gonna happen soon, hopefully. We'll see. So that's it from me today. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe about what you're reading, or just let me know what's going on with you. It's been a pleasure getting back into this a bit. Motivation has been lacking, but I've been reading a bit more. So yeah, hopefully this will start to come a little bit more regularly, but we'll see. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon.